Last week, Apple sued OpenAI. The filing accuses the company and a handful of former Apple employees, including Tang Tan, who used to design the iPhone and now runs OpenAI's hardware division, of a pattern of theft targeting proprietary hardware designs, prototypes, and manufacturing processes. In this video, we explore OpenAI's vague response to the lawsuit, which is nothing but a mockery of Apple and doesn't make sense at all. Before we get to that, there is a simple mistake. Let's call it a fat joke that comes out in the build-up to this matter. And here's how a $4 trillion company got ghosted by its own law firm's typo. Back in February, Apple's outside lawyer meant to email one OpenAI employee about returning company information. He accidentally emailed a completely different one instead, thanking him for a phone call that never happened.
Another fuck-up. Another fuck-up.
That employee assumed the issue was resolved. He stopped replying. Apple's lawsuit later cited that silence as proof OpenAI ignored its warnings. It wasn't ignored. It was misfiled. You'd expect a lawsuit against the world's most talked-about AI company to be about code. It is not. The trade secret at the center of this case is a metal finishing technique, the process Apple uses to anodize aluminum so it feels the way an Apple product is supposed to feel in your hand. The company building the future of artificial intelligence is currently being sued over how to polish metal. Somewhere, a philosophy professor is rewriting their entire unit on what counts as intelligence. And here's the bigger picture this lawsuit basically confirms. OpenAI's own chief global affairs officer told reporters at Davos this past January that its first hardware device was on track for the first half of this year. Apple alleges that device is being built using Apple's own supply chain and Apple's own manufacturing playbook, without Apple's permission. So that's the lawsuit. Now look closely at how OpenAI actually responded to all of it, and something stops making sense. You are watching the Tech Tales. Take a second, hit subscribe, and let's get into it. 4 days after Apple filed, OpenAI put out a statement. Not a legal filing yet, just a public comment, the kind companies release when they want to look calm without saying much. Here's the exact line. We have no interest in other companies' trade secrets. 9 words. Clean, quotable, almost soothing. It sounds like a denial. It is worded like a denial.
What is the truth in life? Deny everything, admit nothing. You know what's true? What I say is true.
So why does it never actually deny anything Apple's lawsuit claims happened? Put the two documents side by side, and the gap becomes obvious fast. Apple's complaint is specific to the point of being uncomfortable. Interviewees were allegedly told to bring real hardware components with them. An internal offboarding document allegedly repurposed into a cheat sheet for dodging exit security checks. A text message about accessing Apple's network storage after employment had ended. A company laptop that was never returned. OpenAI's statement addresses none of it. It talks about fair competition. It talks about the freedom to work wherever you choose.
So you know exactly how fast the thing is going?
Yes, but if we do, we cannot also know where that thing is. Does that sound logical to you?
No, sir.
Those are principles, not facts. And you can believe deeply in one, while allegedly having coached someone to sneak batteries out of a building. The statement isn't false. It's just answering a different question than the one being asked, and it's doing that on purpose. Here's a name you won't find anywhere in Apple's 41-page complaint. Jony Ive. The man who designed the iPhone, and pretty much every product that made Apple's design language famous, left the company back in 2019, and now runs OpenAI's hardware efforts through his studio, Love From. He co-founded the startup OpenAI paid $6.5 billion for. By any reasonable read of the org chart, he's at the center of exactly what this lawsuit is about. And Apple didn't name him. Why would you build a case around stolen hardware secrets and leave out the one person actually setting the hardware vision? According to reporting from Bloomberg's Mark Gurman, the omission isn't about a lack of evidence. It's about optics. Ive wasn't involved in the day-to-day recruiting or the alleged security workarounds, so there's less to point at directly. But there's also history. Ive remains close with Laurene Powell-Jobs, who has backed both I/O products and his design studio, and he spoke at Steve Jobs' memorial service. Dragging him into a lawsuit risks turning the story into Apple attacking one of its own legends. Sometimes the most strategic legal decision is who you very deliberately don't sue. And this isn't staying contained to two names. Apple has reportedly sent legal preservation letters to dozens of former employees now working at OpenAI, instructing them to hold on to anything that might become relevant to the case. That's not the move you make if you think this is about one hardware chief and one electrical engineer. Here's the detail that actually breaks your brain a little. There's already a separate federal case filed in Texas back in 2025 where Elon Musk's companies, X Corp and XAI, sued Apple and OpenAI together, accusing them of colluding to give ChatGPT preferential App Store treatment. That case is still active, with a trial date set for this coming October. In that courtroom, Apple and OpenAI are co-defendants, sitting on the same side of the room. Right now, at the exact same time, they're suing each other in a completely different courtroom entirely. Same two companies, same industry. Teammates in one lawsuit, trying to bury each other in another, and apparently capable of holding both relationships at once, without so much as an awkward Slack message between them. Here's why the timing of all this actually matters. OpenAI reportedly filed its IPO paperwork confidentially last month, a status that lets a company keep financial details out of public view while regulators review them. A study published in the Accounting Review looked at exactly this filing decision across hundreds of companies, and found that firms which file publicly see roughly a 16% jump in litigation risk in the window before going public, an effect the researchers found is strongest for business disputes and intellectual property lawsuits specifically. Firms that file confidentially largely dodge that spike, which means OpenAI picked the one filing method built to shield it from a lawsuit exactly like this one. In the same month, Apple filed one anyway. The insurance policy didn't fail. It just wasn't built to cover the one company OpenAI most needed to stay quiet with. This is actually a fairly standard legal playbook, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Timothy Coombs, who has spent decades at Texas A&M studying how organizations talk their way through a crisis, has published research on exactly this pattern. Denying specific facts is risky, because if even one turns out to be true, your credibility is gone for good. Defending a general principle instead costs you nothing, because a principle is almost impossible to disprove. OpenAI didn't deny bringing hardware to interviews. It affirmed a belief in fair competition. Nobody can fact-check a belief. You've probably seen this exact move somewhere closer to home. A company sends a statement after something goes wrong, full of words like commitment and values and moving forward, and somehow, by the end of it, you still don't know what actually happened. Same playbook, much smaller scale, possibly your own inbox. 2 years ago, Tim Cook and Sam Altman stood on a stage together and told the world these two companies were partners. Last week, one of them accused the other of theft reaching, in Apple's own words, every level of the organization. This week, asked to respond directly, the other one talked about freedom and fair competition, and never once said the words show and tell, cheat sheet, or metal finishing. Think about this, because it's the one this entire video has been building toward. A statement that answers a different question than the one being asked isn't a mistake. It's a choice, made by people who understood exactly which question they didn't want to answer on the record, in a document that could be quoted back to them in court. The real story here was never really about stolen prototypes, cracked padlocks, or old laptops. It's that in a fight this size, the most revealing thing a company can do isn't what it admits. It's the question it very carefully avoids. If you made it this far, you're a champ. Subscribe, and see you in the next one.